for me, self-love is, also self-betterment and, telling people publicly that I love myself and that I think I'm a good person and I can do great things. There's nothing selfish about that, because if I tell myself that and I believe that, which I do, then it's going to make me a more powerful person, and it means I can do more positive things and I can have a bigger impact on other people and the planet. And I also just want to promote the fact that there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying to someone or to yourself that you think that you're a great person.
Hello, beautiful people. On today's podcast, we have the beautiful Tom. Tom is an entrepreneur, co-founder of sustainable retail concept Blaek Store, and photographer. He's a global advocate for the Seabin Project for cleaner oceans, an outdoor enthusiast, and what he terms an eco-runner, having just signed on as an Australian ambassador for Salomon. What I personally love about this conversation is Tom's endearing personality. Tom originally came on the podcast to talk about the Project Run Forever, a project in which he ran for 34 hours and has to date raised an incredible $25,000 for the Seabin Foundation. I'll leave a link in the description if you would like to donate. We did discuss this, and there are a lot of mindset gems shared from his ultramarathon experience. But what was surprising was how deep his self-love goes. These days you see all over social media these aspirations of self-love, but Tom genuinely and wholly lives it. He shares an intimate mantra of his that he lives by that personally went deep for me, and I have no doubt will impact you too. Words are just words unless you live them, and when you live them, they indeed become you. The question I do pose as you listen to this podcast is, what words do you live by, and are they aligned with who you want to be? Please enjoy this wonderful podcast with the wonderful Tom.
Going.
Welcome to the podcast, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
So, Tom, where I would love to start is with a social media post of yours. I feel so lucky to have given myself access to nature when I've needed it in my life. I've prioritized it over almost everything, while still being a normal, good person who works a more than 40-hour week, burns toast, fathers a beautiful kid, and puts the bins out on Tuesday nights. I never get through my to-do list. I'm always only just on time or slightly late, but never early, and sometimes can't afford avocados. All the stuff we do in life takes up time, and my time spent in nature is a gift I give myself. But it doesn't fall in my lap. I fight hard for every run, every surf, swim, or ride. Fight to slot it in, to clear the schedule, and to make sure I don't feel guilty from running away from everyday life. The reason I fight is because nature delivers every single time, and it helps me deliver the best version of myself so that my work, my responsibilities, and my relationships, my life, are not something I turn up to, but something I completely smash. Nature has all the answers, can reset us, remind us how small we are, and also start an inferno inside us of positivity. I have nature to thank for the person that I am, the relationships I have created, my career, passion, knowledge, and power, and I would not be the same without it. So, Tom, I absolutely loved the writing.
We could probably just end the conversation there, right? I've said
everything. This epitomizes you. Well,
wow,
I absolutely.
That's so unbelievable.
Well, it was unbelievable to read, Tom, truly, and I resonated in many different ways as well, and it got me thinking. I'm always curious about this. When did you sort of begin realizing how important spending time out in nature is in your life?
When did I first realize that? I think it was growing up watching TV, funnily enough. I grew up in Melbourne, and my earliest memories of nature are watching David Attenborough documentaries on TV on Sunday night, sitting on my dad's knee. My parents were huge into nature. huge into animals, my dad in particular. And I can just remember falling in love with animals before I even had, knew what they were.
Wow.
And then from there were family trips that I was very lucky to have been taken along to with my parents. Camping trips, hiking trips, got thrown in the ocean at a very young age. And then I was kind of drawing the distinction between these animals and these incredible ecosystems I was seeing on TV and the actual real life. And I had all this knowledge about animals and nature from all these documentaries. And then I was just like, let me at it. Let me get in this thing, all over this thing, and just experience it.
It's absolutely beautiful. I love it so much. And I'd love to know, because on your social media, obviously I had a good stalk. I was trying to learn about you and what you've sort of been through over the years. And there was a post where you suggested that the year 2020 was your hardest year. And I'd love to know sort of what was the mindset that helped you get through one of the hardest years in your life?
The mindset I always go back to, no matter how tough things are in life for whatever reason, that I'm a good person and I can do great things.
Beautiful.
And no matter what happens, you might lose everything in your life, but no matter what, no one can change the fact that you're a good person or you think you're a good person, believe you're a good person, and you're capable of doing great things. So that's what I do. Like when I fall on my ass, something goes horribly wrong, I just go back to those things. And I say those things to myself. I believe those things and I act on those things. And I talk to other people about those things, whether that's on social media through just a post saying, hey, guys, I'm a good person. Love, Tom. Or if it's sitting down face to face with, friends or family or whoever and just discussing, why I think I'm a good, powerful person who's capable of good things. I think it's something that's underrated. People are always scared of being arrogant or full of themselves, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with, telling yourself, giving yourself this positive reinforcement and giving yourself the ability to do great things.
That really sort of like hits home for me. Certainly this year, it's been a belief I wasn't fully aware that I had, that I'm not a good person. And it's something that I've been working on very recently over the months. And it's a very deep one and it's a really raw one. So I kind of love that you're connecting with this belief, because I think it's so incredibly important. I know for me in my own life, this belief is kind of manifested in me very much being a people pleaser and kind of making sure everyone else around me is good. So that I can feel like I'm a good person, and that, hasn't always ended with me sort of taking care of myself. I'd love to know, where did those beliefs come from? Like, why those two beliefs for you?
Well, first of all, like what you just said, I'm the same. I'm a people pleaser. I would much rather help someone else before I help myself.
Right.
And that definitely doesn't make you a good person, as you just said. But it doesn't make you a bad person. It just makes you a good person with flaws, with something that you need to work on and you need to kind of keep in check. And that's how I approach, being a good person is you're always a work in progress, obviously. But yeah, starting off and saying, I'm a good person, I'm capable of great things. That means, you're putting yourself in a position to work on these flaws and become better and better every day.
And obviously these positive affirmations were kind of the centerpiece of you getting through 2020. Was there anything else, potentially maybe more physical, that kind of helped you get through that?
Yeah, well, we're probably going to talk about running at some point.
We are. We might as well dive in.
Yeah. Like more important than like running or whatever the physical act was, just nature, going back to nature. No matter what happens in my day, it's a bit of a cliche, but no matter what happens, if I jump in the ocean or I put myself out in nature, it makes everything much better, and it resets me, and it reminds me that I can kind of do that whenever I'm stuck. I can go back to that, and I can remember that there is this thing in my life that I can put myself in, which is incredibly rewarding, exciting, and fun. So yeah, nature, running in nature, trail running, surfing in the ocean, swimming, body surfing, getting lost, doing things out in nature that aren't just, perfectly under control and perfectly safe and fine. Going out in the rain in the middle of the night and getting completely lost, and doing these really primal things that force you to kind of shed, whatever little problems you have going in your life and just put you in survival mode, which is something that I really, really try to prioritize often. That was another thing. So it was kind of telling myself, hey, Tom, this has happened, but you're a good person and you can do great things. And then, putting myself in some beautiful and some scary situations so that I can kind of be primal and be stripped of all these kind of details.
I absolutely do the same, and I definitely recommend that as well. I think so many of us can get so caught up in our head, and it's just like sometimes you don't need to always find the answers to every question that you have, and just to kind of get in nature, get back into your body. And as you're suggesting, that primal instinct, that survival instinct of coming back into your body can kind of give you the shift of energy that you need. And to my understanding, a couple of years ago, you did your first 100-kilometer run, and I was watching some footage from this time in your life, because essentially, to my understanding, it was pretty early on that you sort of came to have hip flexor issues, and sort of things didn't kind of pan out the way that you had planned, which, if any ultramarathon runners or endurance people are listening, that tends to be the way that it goes. But you pursued to do this 100 kilometers, and the footage that I saw was kind of, I don't know if it was sort of morning or night, but it was quite dark, and it was very silent, and you were just kind of walking at a slow pace. And for someone that has endurance experience, I'm like, that's a long slog that he's got ahead of him. But you did it, and I was so impressed by that. And I would love to know, in those situations, Tom, particularly your first 100 kilometers, it's different sort of moving forward. What was really pulling you to continue that and finish that?
Yeah. I think going into it, I knew 100% that I had the mental strength or mental fortitude to get through. The physical had a bit of a question mark. I obviously worked incredibly hard, but I was still fairly new to ultra running, and I was building up my kind of resilience, muscles, ligaments, and then kind of bones that are like the next piece of puzzle. So I was working really hard with my strength coach and physio, Jackson Harding, but I had a question mark over the physical. I was still confident. I still didn't think that was going to happen at all. But yeah, I was really confident in my mental, and when the physical body kind of collapsed and like I physically could not run through it, that's when I said to me, cool, you've got the mental, so you're going to finish this, you're going to tick it off, and the physical, you can build that up. The mental is kind of like a bit of a tougher game, I think. So that was why I had to get to the end, because I had to say, you're going to tick off 100 Ks. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be painful. It's going to go basically as wrong as a 100K run can go.
Right.
And you're going to get through.
Yeah.
And I just knew how well that was going to serve me for future kind of endurance efforts and life.
That's such a present theme for me. It was only today. So throughout my endurance journey, which has been about 3 years now, I've never had a coach, so to speak. And today I decided that I was going to reach out to Matty Abel and see, I've got a couple of runs going on at the end of the year. And literally in the message to him, I was like, I trust that I have the strongest mental fortitude that I can, and that I will get through it based on mindset. But what I've realized is there is a limit to that, because your body will break down before your mind does when you have that. And certainly in runs that I've done, that's what happens every time. Something will start playing up early, and then it's like this mindset that I have to kind of the resilience I have to depend on to get through it. And maybe within there, that's something that I need to work on. Maybe I enjoy that I kind of go to the depths really early, and I feel like there's a lot of self-development and growth in that. But I did say to him, I'm like, but I need to try something different, because I think if I can make my physical self a lot stronger, I think I can go further, and I think I can go faster. And if I pair that with my mental fortitude, then I'm sure I'll be achieving a lot more than what I am at the moment, just depending on my mindset. So I really love that you brought that up, because I think a lot of people, Tom, that kind of come into this space, particularly in the realm of sort of self-growth and development, have such strong mindsets. And the thing that kind of holds them back is they don't necessarily do the same work when it comes to being physically prepared for the challenges that they set themselves.
Yeah. And I mean, the mental strength for the actual endurance effort that you're about to undertake is super important, but it's just as important, in the training, and I'm not talking about like the tough training days. I'm talking about the annoying training days, where you're doing, you're targeting one muscle in your leg that's just so boring and you can't work out how to do the exercise, and it's frustrating. And then also rehab, after that run, I had a bunch of rehab I had to do, and it sucked, but I absolutely loved it, because I was like, I know this sucks and I can do it.
Right.
So, I think the mental thing, it just makes you a better runner in general, not just during the actual run. If you've got it, I think you're lucky in a way, but you're also unlucky, because I think it says a lot about what's gone down in your life. If you've had a very easy life with no ups and downs, then I think your mental strength would be something you have to work on during runs. I think it's kind of a bit of a bonus, but it's also a work in progress.
And you helped Dan Price, who has been a guest on this podcast, with his Project 205 run. To my understanding, you paced him and you were there for him. And also, to my understanding, it was one of your best runs in your life. Can you share more about that experience?
Yeah, definitely shout out to Dan Price, my brother from another mother. Huge love for that guy. He's a huge part of my life, and he's an incredible guy. And the episode you recorded with him was incredible, made me cry. Project 205 was just an unbelievable event. It was the biggest thing I'd been a part of from a point of view of logistics and danger and remoteness and moving parts and team members. It was just absolutely huge. Like, I'd never been a part of anything like that.
Wow.
So I was coming in to motivate Dan, to pace Dan, and my little secret agenda, which I'm sure Dan knew of, was to kind of suck in as much knowledge from all of these people and the event for future events for myself, and, things that I do with Dan, which are always going to be on the cards. Dan, I ran a really tough section of the course through the night with Dan. It was tough because it was basically 95% just like ridiculous vert. It was pitch black. It was cold. The trail snaked like this, and we ended up crossing the same river, I think, about 14 times before we started the vert. So it was very frustrating. Dan's legs were kind of just starting to get a little bit sloppy, so it was hard for him to do these river crossings on slippery rocks. And it was one of the most incredible runs of my life, and I'll never forget it. Because as soon as we crossed the rivers and we just hit the vert, Dan and I were running in silence for probably 90% of the run.
Wow.
And it felt like we were just in unison.
Beautiful.
Like our legs were just matching perfectly. We were just in this flow state. And at night you kind of always lose concept of time. But this section, I think we were running for about 5 or 6 hours uphill, and it felt like about half an hour. So it was an incredible thing to be a part of. People would have looked into Dan after seeing him on your podcast and heard him speak about the event, but it was an incredible act of bravery, but it was also an incredible act of humility, knowing when to stop, even if you don't 100% know why, but working with a team of people who do know why. And being proud enough to say, hey, I'm stopping, but this has been a complete success. That was the thing that really blew my mind about Dan on that run.
So in relation to that, because I know for me this was true, was that kind of an expansion of the beliefs that you had going into it? Because I know for me, it's like, as you're suggesting, this was an event that was absolutely pretty enormous in terms of like pulling it together. And I feel like for most people, the pressure of feeling that you have to complete what you said that you started would be immense. What was it like for you to witness someone so amazing, as you suggest, being able to sort of be so full of humility and understanding when to be able to stop?
Yeah, it was incredible. Like, I almost can't put it into words. When people ask me kind of what went down, why did he end up, falling short, it's really hard to explain. Like, I'm just not even sure if I can explain it now. But basically, Dan wanted to go on. He felt like he could go on. But the last section that he was going into was so remote that if he fell over and couldn't get up, he would have to be helicoptered out. So it was kind of the smart decision. He'd had a really tough time. It definitely wasn't an easy run up until that point. So he just reached this point, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he reached this point where he sort of said, I feel content. And, thinking about his family and everyone in the team, he kind of didn't want to put himself or everyone else through the end, which could have been potentially devastating.
Right.
So it was risk versus reward.
So let's dive into your recent run, Project Run Forever, that was on April 8th of this year, so incredibly recent. I'm really excited because I feel like you're probably still integrating to an extent your experience. I know that you've described it as the hardest thing that you have ever done in your life. Can you share more about this run and what doing the hardest thing you've ever done looks like?
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Where do you start? So Project Run Forever, it was a fundraising initiative. I was running to raise funds for Wild Places and Seabin, who do work on land and in oceans to kind of create a better future for our planet. So I wanted to do a fundraiser, and I wanted to do something that involved the community both physically and online. Something that was kind of fun instead of just someone going off and running in the bush, no one being able to be a part of it, and then, finishing being like, hey, I ran this far and I raised this much money. So the concept was I was going to run 10-kilometre loops around Manly Dam, which is a local trail of mine. And I was going to ask people to start throwing money into the fundraising kitty. And if money came in, like whatever amount of money it was, from 5 cents to $5 million, I was going to set out for another 10-kilometre loop. And basically, if people kept donating, I was just going to keep running for as long as I could.
Amazing.
So yeah, I was genuinely saying I'm going to run forever. And it's kind of a funny thing to say, but that's what I had to say to myself and to people asking about it, because if I put a number on it, then I'd kind of be aiming for that number, which could potentially ruin me. Or if I got to that number, then I could be like, cool, I'm done.
Right.
So it was tough for a lot of reasons. It was tough physically and mentally, obviously, because I ran the longest I've ever run in my life. It was tough because there was no finish line, so there was kind of no goal in mind. I was just going out and running. And it was tough because there was a huge team behind it. There was lots of kind of media action. There was a lot of interest from the media. So there was a lot of like talking on camera and, trying to come up with eloquent simple words to describe what you're doing and get people excited while you're like hurting like hell.
Yeah, that's really difficult. So I love sort of getting into the nitty-gritty of this stuff, because truly what you achieved was absolutely phenomenal and takes so much grit. What is it like sort of in those moments where it's really challenging? To my understanding, I think around like you had like, how do I pronounce this? Because I was going to say you decide, I think you said, I want to give up. And then you ended up running for another 7 hours and 20 minutes. So I'd love to know about more of that like moment, if you could describe that moment where you just feel like you're absolutely done, and what gets you to get up and run another 7 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's something, when I look back on Project Run Forever, I'm really proud with how my body held up, because I got to around 110 kilometers and I felt absolutely perfect, like no complaints whatsoever, which I was really proud of, because that's where like the training in the gym and on the trail, like I feel like I've ticked most of the boxes there. But yeah, what I've been trying to reflect on is not the good parts, because the good parts are just like, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I want to reflect on the bad parts and put myself in that headspace that I was in, where I was in, huge amounts of pain and just wanted to give up. And it's a really hard thing to do. I feel like your body or your mind does this thing afterwards, which I'm sure anyone could relate to that's been through anything physically painful, where it's kind of, the feeling's kind of deleted. Like you can't put yourself back there and be like, oh, that's what it felt like. I think if you could, you probably wouldn't do it again.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of women could say that about childbirth. I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, it was horrible physical pain. There's kind of no way to sugarcoat it. Your muscles, they don't work. Like they don't physically work how they're supposed to. My issue in this run was my quads. That was my only issue. And the problem was I hadn't trained downhill running enough, which is kind of the one thing that's often neglected. I kind of underestimated how much downhill technical running there was. And my quads, which are your brakes when you're running downhill, just became absolutely cooked. I could jog slowly or walk quickly, but I could hardly stand up. I could hardly lift my feet. So that moment I came into the aid station, and that was after running 10Ks on broken quads. And I said to my team, there's just absolutely, like, they're not going to get better. So it's now going to be about management. So the call was made for me to go to the back of the van and have a nap. I went down for a nap. Dan Price tucked me into bed and he literally closed the door of the van, and then it was like he opened it instantly. Yeah, like it was honestly like that. I was like, dude, what are you doing? And he's like, you've been out for like an hour or two. I had a great sleep, but I was kind of moving my toes around while I was still lying down, and I was like, I could feel my quads were exactly the same. So Dan definitely helped me a lot. I definitely would not have been able to do it by myself. He forced me to stand up, which was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
And then he was just like, dude, let's put your shoes on. Got my shoes on, which was very difficult. And then in the lead up, Dan's plan with me was, no matter what's happening, like the worst thing in the world could be happening, but we're going to leave the aid station and run 1 kilometre. And if you run 1 kilometre and you cannot continue, then you come back and you drop. That was the plan. And obviously, like, you know, your crew are there to keep you going. So it's kind of a bit of an evil plan. Once you get 1 kilometre out, it's like, do you backtrack or you just run another 9?
Very well played.
So went out. You know, I had the realization by then that there's no way they're going to get better. So I figured I may as well just go and do what I can for as long as I can. And that ended up being, 7 hours and 20 minutes, which was very painful, but it ended up being the most valuable part of the run for me, looking back.
And what goes on in your mind in those 7 hours and 20 minutes? Like, are you reflecting on things? Do things come to your mind that you're sort of thinking about? Are you in a mantra, like just sort of one step in front of the other? Like, what sort of are you experiencing during that time?
The biggest thing is, trail running is technical. You've got to be on mentally and kind of put your feet in the right place. When the biggest muscle in your legs is not functioning and you're also dealing with a lot of pain, you've got to be even more on. Right. So I was very much in my own head and very much thinking about my own safety. Like, I didn't want to fall off, an edge of a cliff, or I didn't want to, fall over and hit my head. So I was definitely first and foremost concentrating on just staying upright as I was getting around these laps. But it's also like, as you start moving a little bit slower towards the end of these efforts, it's just a really great time to reflect on what you've done. Often when your crew and, any of the public that came to hang out, they notice that you're kind of, deteriorating. That's when they'll jump in to motivate you. And that's when you get to have really incredible chats and you get to finally, I don't want to say take the foot off the pedal, because it's still incredibly difficult with the concentration and you're trying to, drag yourself to the finish line, whatever that was in this event. But it gives you a little moment to kind of reflect on, wow, this is what I've done. This is what we're doing together. This is what I'm a part of. This community is like incredible. And you're just so thankful.
Yeah, I know that was so important to you, because I did see you write a very long post about this, just how important the people play a role in doing something like this. I think a lot of people that haven't experienced an event like this don't understand how important the support around you is. So I really appreciate that you appreciate that. I think it's very important to highlight in the successes and the achievements that we have, just how important the support around us is. And so you ended up running for 34 hours, which ended up being 140 kilometers. What was it like when you finished, when you took that last step?
Definitely emotional. That's the moment where you're kind of safe. You can kind of let it all go. There's nothing else that's kind of expected of you physically. So that's the moment where you kind of can finally let your guard down, drop any of this, internal chatter that's, fake, trying to get you to keep going. So huge relief. And your mindset switches from, incredible focus and self-preservation to incredibly thankful and full of love and just overwhelmed with emotion, because at that point everyone's looking at you and, saying well done. And that's a moment where you can kind of celebrate what you've achieved with everyone.
And I know the concept of self-love is very important to you. And you speak about kind of this very fine line between self-love and selfishness. Can you share more about how you bring self-love into your life? Because again, I've read your posts and you so outwardly and confidently and beautifully will say, I love myself. I think I'm an absolutely incredible person. And unfortunately, I feel like that sort of self-talk is quite rare.
Yeah. So, first thing, you mentioned the word selfish. Selfishness is something that I'm constantly terrified of.
Probably goes back to the people pleasing we were talking about.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But selfishness, like valuing yourself above, another person or another life form, that's that's definitely, I don't want anything I do to ever be, confused as being selfish. And I'm constantly scared of that. Whether it's going out for a run and, being late to, go out for dinner with friends, but it's really important to go for a run because you've had an incredibly hard day and you need to clear your head.
Right.
Sometimes I'm running and I'm like, am I being selfish? And I'm constantly kind of checking in about that. But that to me is kind of a form of self-love, because for me, self-love is, also self-betterment. And, telling people publicly that I love myself and that I think I'm a good person and I can do great things. There's nothing selfish about that, because if I tell myself that and I believe that, which I do, then it's going to make me a more powerful person, and it means I can do more positive things and I can have a bigger impact on other people and the planet. And I also just want to promote the fact that there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying to someone or to yourself that you think that you're a great person. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We're all kind of more than happy to put ourselves down and say, right, I don't like this feature of my body, or I'm not doing this well enough. But, why don't we all just start focusing on the good things about ourselves, as well as the bad things, obviously. But, there's nothing wrong with saying I'm a really good person and I'm doing a good job.
I just love that. I'm a good person, or I love myself, I'm a good person, and I can do great things. I just think that is incredibly beautiful and incredibly powerful. And I'd love to know, because before we press record, we were talking about Pat Farmer, that's recently been on the podcast, and a quote of his, which is all about kind of, being confident enough to face death itself. And when you're not afraid of death itself, you can truly achieve the impossible. And you sort of brought in the idea of Conor McGregor, obviously a huge success in his area of sport. And he talks about a similar concept of obsession and the necessity of obsession to truly achieve greatness. Where are you on the line with this? Because I know that family and friends are so important to you. Your work in terms of the environment is important. Ultramarathon running isn't the only thing that you're doing. What is your commitment to this sport?
Well, I'm absolutely obsessed with it, but it's not 100% of my life, and I don't want it to be 100% of my life. I'm always striving to do what I want to do, because I feel like if you have passion and want behind what you're doing, then it makes you ultimately more successful. And I'm really proud that I've structured, my working life, my running life, my community life around what I want to do, not what I have to do, or, not what I'm obliged to do. So yeah, I definitely do think I'm obsessed with nature. I'm obsessed with running, but I don't want it to be 100% of what I'm doing, because I kind of don't see that as getting the most out of life for me. I want to work. I love the work that I do with Seabin, with Blaek, the business I own, and with working with companies as an ambassador in the running space. I love that stuff. And if someone said to me, hey, tomorrow you can wake up and be a pro runner and just focus on running, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I would want to do it. I don't think it would be enough. There would be that voice in the back of my mind that said, do you want to be one-dimensional, or, do you want to really attack as many things as you can in life?
And let's talk about Seabin. And I have a little quote here of yours. You said, the cleanup is not the solution, but the act that creates vital conversations, educational prospects, and the all-powerful international language of data. And I personally really love this because I think with these sort of bigger themes that we need to touch on in society, sometimes it's hard to sort of wholly understand what goes into this. And so I feel like a lot of people could come from the perspective of like, okay, so how does, Seabin cleaning up our harbour sort of ensure that we have a world for our future? But the idea that I really loved about this is the talk about like it's the symbolism, it's the bringing the awareness to this that brings the conversation and therefore sort of brings the expansion into this. Can you share more about your experience with Seabin?
Yeah, for sure. So just for background, Seabin is an ocean cleanup group. I work for them full-time Monday to Friday, and we focus on ocean cleanup, and I'll explain why I'm doing that in a bit. But what we call upstream solutions. So we don't work in open ocean. We work in river systems and Sydney Harbour, for example, to kind of turn off the tap and stop the rubbish getting out to the ocean where it becomes a massive problem. And a huge part of the business alongside the cleanup is basically monitoring and recording what is in our water 24/7, 365 days a year, which has never been done before. And producing this all-important data, which we can share with the public, businesses and the government so that we can get an idea of this huge problem, which is rubbish in our waterways. So focusing on the process rather than the outcome is something that's incredibly important and something I always remind myself of no matter what I'm doing. Project Run Forever, for example, I can't focus on the outcome. I can't be like, you're going to run 100 Ks or 200 Ks. My work at Blaek store, working in the retail space, selling sustainable fashion, I can't say to people, hey, the world's going to be better in 10 years where we only have sustainable fashion, because that's not going to be the case. So we can only focus on what we can do now and the education piece along the way.
Yep.
And with Seabin being an ocean cleanup group, people focus on the cleanup and they're like, oh, so you're cleaning up. But cleaning up is a bit of a futile concept. You can clean up a tiny area, obviously. You see a piece of rubbish on the ground, you pick it up, it's not there anymore.
Right.
But cleaning up the ocean is a very futile concept. But the opportunity we have and the work we're doing at Seabin is monitoring what's there so that we can then create a huge amount of importance on the facts, the data, the international language, and then create solutions that come from the top down.
Right. And can you share more about your belief that the world's biggest problems can and should be solved by everyday people?
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's just me in a nutshell. Like I'm just an everyday person. I'm incredible. I hope I've gotten that across.
You can keep saying it on this podcast.
Yeah. I'm an everyday person. People always say, wow, Tom, you're doing this, and wow, you ran 140K, and wow, you did this. And yeah, I did do that, but I did that as an everyday person. Like I'm definitely not a superhero. No one person has waved a magic wand and just given me the ability to do these things. I've just kind of taken them upon myself and worked really hard at them. And a lot of the people that I'm working with and that are in my community, Dan Price in the running world, Pete Siglinski, who's one of the founders of Seabin and the CEO, Nikki, who's my business partner at Blaek store, they're all just everyday people. They, I don't want to say they don't know what they're doing, but they, fell into what they're doing out of necessity and out of the fact that they think someone has to do it. So they stood up and did it. And I think that's how the world's problems get solved, not by everyday people going, oh, I'm going to just do this over here and let this important person handle it, or I'm going to wait for the government to kind of tell us what to do. Everyone, especially in Australia, like such a free country, you can start a business tomorrow. You can start an Instagram account and say, hey, this is me. This is what I'm doing. Do you like it?
I wish it was that simple in my head, Tom.
Well, it's simple.
It's
simple to take away. To take the leap of faith is simple. Anyone can do that. You know, anyone can sign up to run a 100K ultra. But then once you've signed up, once you've taken the leap of faith, then the real hard work is the training and learning your craft and hopefully inspiring people along the way.
I absolutely love it. And it's so timely that you said inspiration, because to my understanding, 3 key reasons why you run and do these projects. 1 is personal growth. 2 is bringing awareness to environmental issues. And 3 is being an inspiration to yourself and others. So the first question that I'd love to ask around this is, who's been an inspiration for you around doing the things that you're doing in your life?
Definitely David Attenborough, like from day dot. You know, seeing this guy traveling around the world, being a vessel for inspiring people to learn about animals, love animals, and want to protect animals, and doing it in a really accessible way. So he was, a huge inspiration growing up. Definitely people in the sporting world. I mean, I could mention Dan Price again. There's countless others, but people in the sporting world that, yes, achieve really well, really highly as athletes, but then also share other parts of themselves and really promote the fact that they're just everyday people, which is something I wish a lot of like super elite like sports people were doing. I think that would be really powerful if someone really, really at the top of the game in the world came out and just started sharing everything about themselves. And then just, people in my life, you know, Nikki, who's my ex-wife and the mother of my 3.5-year-old boy, Dion. She's definitely one of the most incredible people in my life. She keeps me on the straight and narrow, and she makes sure that I'm doing the things that make me a powerful person and helping me achieve my goals. And she allows me to do the same thing for her, which kind of ticks my help other people box. And Dion, like if anyone wants to be an environmentalist or, you know, inspire people to be better, have a kid and look in their eyes often and ask them questions. As soon as they can talk, ask them questions about the world and see how they respond. And for me, I tuck Dion into bed every night and I say to him, I say, you can do, and he responds anything. Wow. And we do that every night. And that's what I want him to not only believe, but act on. So they're kind of all my inspirational aspects or people in my life.
Absolutely beautiful. And I mean, my second question was going to be that, what is the form of inspiration that you would want to be for someone like Dion? And I think the belief that I can do everything, and particularly following that with action, is just unbelievably powerful, and certainly a beautiful representation of the incredible, phenomenal, brilliant person that you are, Tom. There you go. I'm throwing in all these amazing words because you've just got me thinking how amazing you are. So the energy certainly brings it back into your life, but truly I mean it. And thank you so much, Tom, for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. It's been amazing connecting with you. Thank you for bringing the inspiration into my life. I truly appreciate it.
Yeah, well, right back at you. And thanks for doing. You know, a lot of people talk about doing, but you're doing it. You've come up with this podcast. You're putting yourself out there, you know, having, you know, complex conversations with, you know, people that you've just met. This sort of thing gets me really amped because it's someone saying, I'm going to do something, going out and doing it for the purpose of yourself, because it's going to make you grow, but also like me and everyone that watches it. So thanks so much for having me, and I love what you're doing.
Amazing. Good vibes all around. So Tom, I'd love to ask you on a final note, What does it mean to you to be human?
To be human to me is to know all the time that I'm flawed and I'm never going to be perfect, and waking up every day to make sure I'm aware of that and striving to be a better person every single day, however I can, even if I just make tiny changes. But yeah, being aware of that and never kind of giving up on life and just always striving to be better in all aspects.